Let's go.
Wednesday afternoon.
That he was vulnerable at last. I don't know. That together with their injuries, particularly in their back line, their defensive side of things, has probably contributed to what's actually happened, because in no circumstances are they the same team. Every so often we think, oh, they're getting back to it, but then they go and lose again. And you think, no, they're not getting back to it, really. I think on Saturday, John Stones actually started the game, so that was one extra person back, but they're still missing. And of course, Walker's gone off to Italy. So there's a change going on now. There's a rebooting of their whole setup. And indeed, it's interesting, but with Haaland up front, I mean, he's a tremendous goal scorer, but another side of that, perhaps, which I think one or two people have commented on, is that suddenly they find themselves very limited in the way they can play their tactics. In other words, they've got to get the ball up to Haaland, ideally with a cross. He's very good on heading in crosses and things. But there is a kind of limitation to playing a full-blown number 9, and nowadays there's a bit of a thing about playing a false 9, as they say, not having a regular centre forward, but somebody perhaps from midfield who goes into that periodically. But they are limited in what they can do. I mean, Haaland is still a great player, because no doubt he gets so much attention from defenders, but he still manages to score goals, which says an awful lot about him. But yeah, I just think we're seeing the cyclical nature of anything, of football in this case, that they've had brilliant dominance for a long time, and it's perhaps going to be a season or two before they can rebuild and get up to speed again. We see the same. We saw it with Liverpool. Liverpool, if you go back, they dominated the 80s. Man United dominated the 90s and the noughties as well, really, until Ferguson went. But since then, they've had to do a rebuilding job, and they're not the same team as they used to be. But I don't. To answer your question, I don't know whether the ones they bought now are going to make the difference. It's hard to imagine that they're going to be of the same quality of the players that have shone so much in the last few years, but it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, while you were just talking, I was thinking about something that is known in business as the law of diminishing returns, which means that there's only that far you can go before. But then there's an exception to the rule in the form of a club in Europe called Real Madrid, because they seem to just dominate the Champions League. I mean, I don't know how many times they've won the Spanish league, but the Champions League is really, they're tough. And I'm thinking, well, if that law really applies in football, what's stopping it from applying to Real Madrid? And that's what stops me in my track when I think of that. But the law of diminishing return, I mean, there's only that much championing you can do. You can only be a champion for so long before, you stop, I mean, should we really be worried about Manchester City? Because from people's point of view, they're not doing bad. I mean, they are still within finishing in the top 4, so they're not really. They're not really. I don't think their situation is critical. But it's just because of the sort of reputation that
Soft Family and the ladies, Dr. Gladys and Phantom and Rose. We all have a lovely show every weekday. So join us for a lovely show.
Say hello to Phantom, Dr. Glad.
Finishing in the top 4, so they're not really. They're not really. I don't think their situation is critical. but it's just because of the sort of reputation that Pep Guardiola's had, with always winning, that winning mentality. I think that's why he's then being judged by it. It's like a singer as well. If you have a singer or a songwriter, dominating the charts, releasing number ones, the pressure piles on then. You don't want to release a song that will then flop, because you've got to keep up to that high expectation. And I think that's what it is, rather than a real problem that requires requires being given attention to. But the thing is, he seems to be worried about it himself. Pep Guardiola, I mean, you can tell from his countenance, he does, it doesn't look himself when he's losing. Well, you can say that about any other manager, but he's more stressed when things don't go particularly well for him. So I hope the big spend they've done this, they've had this January window, I hope he improves things. I really hope he does. Now I was kind of wishing that he has a really, really bad season, but now I feel sorry for him. I don't know why.
Especially as, I mean, you're a Man United fan. I mean, it's unusual for you to be worried about Man City, because there's quite a divide in Manchester, isn't there, between the two sets of the noisy neighbours, as they call them. But I agree with you. I think most football fans, most neutral football fans, certainly think a lot of Guardiola, as I think a lot of people did of Jurgen Klopp as well, because they are probably at the top of their game, and the two of the top, if not the two top managers in the world in their time. And I always get the feeling that Pep Guardiola is what do we know, but he seems a thoroughly decent man. You get that vibe from him, I think, when he's interviewed, and he's got a good quirky humour, which is always a good thing to see. And he's gone through tough times in the club and in his personal life, which I think shows, if anything, the vagaries of life itself, that no one is immune from the ups and downs of life itself. Things can go very well one time and then not so well. But on the question of the ups and downs,
Sarfemo and the ladies, Dr. Gladys and Phantom and Rose, we all have a lovely show every weekday, so join us for a lovely show.
Say hello to Phantom.